Millhaven Institution inside Canada's maximum security hell. Subscribe now for more authentic crime tales. Remember to like, share, and engage with us in the comments below. In the darkened corridors of Millhaven Institution, the tension hung heavy in the air like an upcoming storm. It was a typical Saturday evening, but as the sun began to set, a simmering discord was about to erupt into chaos. The inmates, confined to their cells, were rife with anticipation. Whispers filled the air as rumors spread like wildfire through the concrete walls. The guards moved through the block, their expressions stern, aware that something was brewing. Suddenly it happened. A deafening alarm pierced the silence, fracturing the seemingly mundane routine. Inmates rushed to their cell bars, their faces filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. A guard had stumbled upon contraband, items smuggled into the prison that could turn the tide from mere incarceration to outright power and rebellion. It was a matter of life and death, trust and betrayal, loyalty and chaos. As the initial alert started to fade, the atmosphere turned electric. Adrenaline coursed through the veins of every inmate as they sensed weakness. This was their moment. A full-blown riot was set to erupt, and the guards were vastly outnumbered. If they had hoped for calm, that hope shattered with the warning sirens. This was just the beginning. The backstory: a prison built for chaos. Millhaven Institution, established in 1971, was constructed after the notorious Kingston Penitentiary became too volatile to manage. From its inception, Millhaven bore the scars of a tumultuous past. Designed to house Canada's most dangerous inmates, the facility designed itself to be a fortress, yet it would become a battleground featuring some of the most violent outbreaks in Canadian correctional history. With its concrete walls standing tall and its barbed wire glistening in the harsh sunlight, Millhaven exuded an unwelcoming demeanor. It housed notorious criminals, gang leaders, and those who had committed the most heinous crimes in the country. Many of the inmates were high-risk individuals who had been transferred from other facilities. They were accustomed to the chaos and lived by their own code, a code that often clashed violently with the structured environment of the prison. The staff at Millhaven were well-trained but often overwhelmed. Being a correctional officer in such a facility came with its own unique stresses. High on their priority list was maintaining order, but they were also well aware of the psychological games at play. Small frustrations could brew into major incidents, and this required vigilance and foresight, qualities as elusive as the very contraband they sought to control. The daily grind, normalcy amidst tension. Life at Millhaven was structured almost to the minute. Inmates awoke early to the sounds of heavy steel doors clanking and echoing through the blocks. Breakfast consisted of bland oatmeal alongside stale bread, meals that stifled morale in a place already devoid of hope. The monotony of prison life wore heavily on the inmates' spirits, making them restless and irritable. During the day, inmates were shuffled through various programs and work assignments designed to keep them engaged. However, many viewed these routines as tame burdens. Opportunities were limited, and freedom was merely an illusion. Interactions with the guards were often tense. Respect was hard-earned. Some officers were well-liked and managed to maintain an air of authority tempered with respect, while others fueled the flames of resentment. In a world governed by power dynamics, favoritism could lead to explosive outcomes. A typical Wednesday might involve inmates reforming their lives through group therapy or educational classes, but there were always whispers in the background, conversations about plans instead of rehabilitation. Everyone knew there were routines, but there were also secrets, hidden alliances, and smuggling rings secretly operating under the noses of the guards. The build-up. Early warning signs. Weeks before the riot, small disturbances had started revealing themselves: scuffles in the yard, disagreements among gangs, and whispers of an incoming shipment of contraband. Although the guards picked up on the heightened tensions, they were unaware of the true extent of the brewing upheaval. Underneath the surface, a plan was forming, one that would leverage the systemic weaknesses of Millhaven. Late-night counts became contentious, and the collective frustration among inmates climbed higher. A core group, known as the Black Sheep, had emerged, rallying other inmates under shared grudges and disdain for authority. Discussions whispered through steel bars turned increasingly aggressive, climaxing on the day the contraband was discovered. The riot unleashed fury. When the sirens wailed in the background, time distorted. Inmates were quick to react. Adrenaline propelled them into action. The black sheep saw the alarm as their calling, a rallying cry to turn the tide. They seized the opportunity amid the chaos, pushing through cell doors that fell to the wayside, fueled by anger and desperation. As the riot erupted, officers realized they'd lost control. Their communication systems cut out and confusion reigned. Inmates, once docile faces in an assembly line, transformed into a tidal wave, pushing forward with a singular mindset. Barricading themselves, they commandeered the main hall, transforming mundane areas into hubs of chaos. Guards, once the defenders, found themselves boxed into corners, outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The turning point, a hidden agenda. While chaos swelled, something unsettling bubbled beneath. The contraband that ignited this detonation was not simply cigarettes and drugs. It was a meticulously crafted power play involving strategic overthrows. Documents later uncovered revealed planned communications between certain inmates and outsiders, an underground network seeking to commandeer the very essence of control within Millhaven. As reports of violence and despair echoed, a striking contrast portrayed itself. Observers soon realized that the riot was a distraction, a calculated attempt to seize control of vital prison resources and break through lines of authority. The clock ticked forward, and the situation escalated dangerously. As guards worked against overwhelming odds, split-second decisions could mean life or death for many. Amidst the swarming bodies, an undercover press presence caught glimpses of the turmoil for the world to see. The evening spiraled beyond expectations. For hours, Millhaven remained enshrined in turmoil as tension simmered, but what would be next? Would the guards rally to reclaim power, or were the inmates' plans beginning a new chapter in the prison's tumultuous history? The chapter closes with an urgent alarm blaring through the hall. The call for lockdown was no longer a preventative measure, but a desperate response to turmoil spiraling out of control. While this chapter sets the stage for further developments, it is just a glimpse into the chaos that lay ahead. The following chapters will unfold more layers of this harrowing story, exploring the lives of those trapped behind bars in a world of unrelenting strife, survival, and the quest for power. As the chaos unfurled, the once structured environment of Millhaven Institution began to warp into a scene of utter disarray. Doors slammed violently, shouts echoed through the air, and the acrid scent of fear mixed with the cold, sterile smell of the prison walls. The blaring sirens served as a dissonant soundtrack, marking the beginning of a chapter that would etch itself into the annals of Canadian correctional history. The anatomy of control. In the aftermath of the initial riot declaration, the importance of control swiftly became apparent. Guards attempted to establish a perimeter while the inmates surged forward in a wave of defiance. As Millhaven faced this unprecedented threat, understanding the prison's architecture, the very bones of Millhaven, was crucial. Millhaven was built with a radial design, facilitating surveillance while allowing for focused control of individual sectors. The design, which appeared brilliantly calculated, often revealed glaring vulnerabilities during chaotic eruptions. Corridors branched off into different cell blocks and common areas, with each turn designed to instill a sense of order. However, there were gaps in the system that the inmates had long recognized. The quiet before the storm. Weeks leading into this pivotal weekend had revealed brewing tensions among inmates. The Black Sheep Gang, an eclectic mix of hardened criminals and young offenders, had been quietly plotting their next move. Conversations over meager meals morphed from trivial complaints about food quality to discussions of rebellion and what they characterized as liberation. Millhaven's daily routines were as predictable as they were monotonous. Mornings began with clangs of metal doors and the scent of overcooked oatmeal filling common areas. Inmates lined up for their meals, faced with the same bland options day after day: unseasoned rice, rubbery chicken, and unidentifiable stews. This served not only as sustenance, but as a backdrop for simmering frustrations. Inmates often expressed their dissatisfaction through protests about food quality or increased lockdowns, igniting small confrontations that went unnoticed in the larger context. Staff brushed off these grievances as typical prison behavior, underestimating the depth of simmering anger. The Pavlovian response. The concept of normal within the prison environment dictated that inmates would eventually become accustomed to the sights and sounds around them. This conditioning pervaded every aspect of life, from the sound of the meal whistle to the structured rec time. However, those familiar patterns often masked moments of unrest, where confusion spread faster than control. In a reactive manner, guards frequently initiated lockdown protocols during minor disturbances. The riot that had just ignited was not simply a product of individual frustrations, but a reaction to an environment ripe with neglect and a systemic lack of respect. Moments of desperation. As the situation escalated, the realization that the guards were ill-prepared set in. Tensions in the yard soared, and inmates willing to exploit the moment seized their opportunity. Unity formed, one that had been absent during calmer times. Disparate factions within the prison found common ground, driven not only by anger but by a burgeoning desire for agency in their lives. It wasn't long before a group of inmates began broadcasting their intentions. With tactical planning, they aimed not merely for survival but for power, real power that transcended criminal hierarchies. The previous night's unrest was only the opening act. A full-scale uprising was imminent. Voices from within. Meanwhile, the walls were lined with faces that told stories of pain, loss, and survival tactics. In the quiet crevices of the prison, stories often whispered emerged, slipped into conversations during yard time. It was here that the voice of Terry, a medium security transfer, found its moment to shine, as he articulated the need for change. We're not just prisoners anymore. We're not just numbers. We're fighting back against this cruel system, Terry proclaimed to a select group, gathering attention as the charges of solidarity ignited among those listening. Another inmate, Jenna, had made her way into the male-dominated conversation, nodding fervently in agreement. We have been silenced for too long. Food, respect. How can we endure when they treat us like animals? A camaraderie formed from shared frustrations and unspoken ambitions. Most importantly, leaders emerged not from the seasoned convicts, but from those desperate for change. Building momentum. As their words echoed through the confines of the prison yard, the emphasis on their grievances transformed into tangible actions. The more the guards attempted to thwart them with lockdowns, the more the inmates coalesced around a singular idea: to seize control of their reality. The day of the riot was unlike any other and provided a breaking point. As the clock struck noon, inmates, fully aware of the plan laid out by their peers, began to act. The guards were inadequately assigned, shifts had rotated and became entangled in everyday routines. This oversight compounded their errors during this fateful day. Like predators on the hunt, the inmates employed distractions. Small skirmishes broke out in different parts of the yard. As guards moved to handle these side disturbances, the larger, orchestrated plan unfolded without incident. An explosive showdown. Then came the moment, the signal for the uprising. A shattering sound echoed as a fire alarm rang out. Smoke canisters were detonated at strategic locations, causing immediate chaos. The red lights of alarms were almost poetic, signaling the call to arms that many had been preparing for. Inmates poured out of their cells like a deluge, determined not to let the opportunity slip away. The guards who had typically held dominion found themselves overwhelmed and caught off guard. Screams echoed alongside the clanging metal that made up Millhaven's framework. As the inmates took control of the common areas, they united across faction lines, a sight that sent a chill through the management. The chaos was no longer localized. It threatened the very foundation of the institution. Shadows in the dark. While chaos consumed the main population, a darker plan unfolded. A small number of inmates capitalized on the uprising, seeking to access sensitive areas within the facility. Some aimed to reach the control room, where they could manipulate security precautions and prisoner movements. Realizing that any semblance of authority had slipped through the cracks, they moved with purpose. Among these inmates was Lionel, a seasoned criminal who had served over a decade and had no intentions of returning to his life behind bars. Alongside a select group, he knew the corridors, having memorized the blueprint from his time in solitary and investigations. "This isn't just about today," he said to his comrades. "This is a shot at freedom." Yet, while some inmates sought escape, others felt a faithful loyalty to the cause rather than personal flee. The motivations were mixed. Some found strength in survival, while others longed for collective empowerment. The guards' perspective. For the guards who had been stationed across Millhaven, the chaos brought immense fear. They moved in twos and threes, attempting to corral inmates who surged forward. A few, inspired by bravery, spoke into radios for assistance. Yet, the situation seemed to escalate beyond their control as cries of fear morphed into resistance. Within the control room, Commander Reynolds monitored the unfolding chaos. Dismay wrinkled his brow as he relayed orders, desperately attempting to contain the uprising. The data and communication systems were failing him. Guards who had previously assured the integrity of operations faltered when faced with a new reality. "Now is not the time to panic. Get a tactical response unit in here," he shouted, yet his calls were met with mixed results. Delays piled up like unreturned emails, while each moment passed lent momentum to the inmates' demands.